What kind of man risks his own life for a stranger he may never see again? Clay Bennett asked himself that as the blizzard roared across Redemption Bluff. His breath turned white in the frozen night while the train pulled away, leaving behind nothing but cold iron tracks and disappointment. He had come for supplies that never arrived, another broken promise, another winter he had to fight alone. He turned toward his horse when he saw something that made him stop. A woman, slumped on the wooden bench, barely conscious, half covered in snow. Clay stepped closer, heart pounding. Her nurse's uniform was stiff with frozen water and stained with old blood. Her lips were almost blue. Frostbite darkened her fingertips. Her hand clutched a medical bag like she feared someone might take it from her even now. He knelt beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. A weak whisper slipped out, "The child I tried." Then her head fell to the side. Clay swallowed hard. His cabin was 2 hours away through deadly cold. He had just enough firewood for a week, maybe 2 if he stretched it. Food was tight. Winter was hitting harder than any year before. He could barely take care of himself. Saving her might cost him everything. But walking away meant she would die here, alone on a frozen bench. His father used to say a man was measured by what he did when nobody was watching. Clay pulled off his only coat and wrapped it around her shaking body. He lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, like the cold had already taken too much from her. "Don't know who you are," he whispered, placing her on his horse carefully. "But dying alone ain't right for nobody. You hang on. You hear?" Snow swallowed their tracks as he rode into the dark night. By the time he reached his cabin, Clay's hands were numb. He kicked the door open and carried her straight to his bed. The small one-room cabin was freezing, the air biting at his skin. He knelt by the fireplace and worked furiously to start a flame. His fingers trembled, but finally orange light flickered, growing into warmth. He stripped away her frozen outer clothes, wrapped her in his wife's old blanket and his only quilt, then placed warm stones near her feet. For 3 days, fever ravaged her. She mumbled names he didn't know. She shook from cold even with the fire burning non-stop. Clay slept sitting up in his chair, jerking awake every hour to make sure she was still breathing. On the 4th morning, she opened her eyes. Fear shot across her face. Her breathing quickened. She tried to sit up. "Where am I?" she asked, voice cracking. "Who are you?" Clay stepped back, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "You're safe, ma'am. Found you near dead at the station. I'm Clay Bennett. This is my cabin." Her eyes darted around the room, the rough furniture, the patched roof, the photos on the mantel, all coated in dust. Her gaze landed on her medical bag, sitting exactly where he placed it. "You didn't touch anything inside?" she asked. Clay shook his head. "Figured it was important to you." Some of the fear left her face. Her shoulders eased. My name is Norah Brennan," she said softly. Clay nodded. "Miss Brennan." "Just Norah," she whispered. "You were bad off. Frostbite on your fingers. Fever for 3 days. You're lucky to be breathing." Norah looked down at her hands wrapped in torn cloth. The bandages were rough but careful. She touched them gently. Then her eyes lifted to the mantel again. She saw the picture of the woman holding a baby. A grave sadness ran through the air like a quiet wind. "Your family?" she asked. "Was," Clay answered. One word holding 3 long years of grief. Norah lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." Clay added another log to the fire. "No need, but I gotta be honest. Looks like we're stuck here together a while. Food's low. Winter don't care about anyone's plans." Norah pushed herself up slowly. She studied him for a long moment. His worn shirt, his calloused hands, his tired eyes. "Then, I won't be a burden," she said firmly. "I'm a nurse. A real one. I can earn my keep." Something changed in Clay's expression. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "For now, you rest." Quote, but Norah was already looking through the frost-covered window. Snow drifted over a small wooden cross outside. She knew instantly what it meant. Grief recognized grief. "I'm sorry for the trouble," she whispered again. Clay shook his head. "No trouble. Just two people trying to survive winter. The wind howled outside. The fire warmed the little cabin. For the first time in months, neither of them was completely alone. That morning, Clay stepped outside to chop wood. When he returned, Norah was staring at the grave again, quiet and thoughtful. At breakfast, over thin porridge stretched with melted snow, she finally told her story. "I'm from Boston," she began. "I work for a wealthy family. The Harrisons." Clay listened, spoon stirring slowly. The patriarch was dying of cancer, maybe weeks left, but the housemaid's little boy got pneumonia, 7 years old. Treatable, if caught early. Her voice steadied. "I went to the boy first, saved him. While I was treating him, Mr. Harrison died. The family blamed me. They said I chose wrong. Said I murdered their father." Quote. Clay's jaw tightened. "They destroyed my name," she whispered. "No hospital would hire me, so I came west. I had nowhere else to go." She looked at him then. "That's who you saved. A disgraced nurse running from her past." Clay set his spoon down. "Well," he said quietly, "looks like we both got things we're running from." Outside, the wind settled. Inside, the fire crackled. Something had begun between them. Something small. Something fragile. Something that felt like the first warm day after a long winter. Clay woke early the next morning and stepped outside to gather firewood. The sky was gray, the cold sharp enough to sting his face, but something felt different. The cabin behind him did not feel empty anymore. Norah's presence changed the silence. It was still quiet, still lonely, but the edges felt softer now. When he returned, she stood at the window wrapped in his wife's old blanket. Her eyes were on the grave beyond the apple tree. Snow covered the cross, but Norah seemed to see straight through it. "You loved them," she said as he set the firewood down. Clay nodded. "More than anything." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He didn't answer. Some things were too deep to touch, but he didn't walk away either. Later, over breakfast, Clay watched her hold the chipped mug gently, warming her fingers on the steam. The bandages he'd wrapped around her hands were frayed but clean. She looked up suddenly. "Your shoulder, it's healed wrong." Clay blinked. "You can tell that from one glance?" "An old break never set right," she said slowly. "I can fix it, if you'll let me." He studied her carefully. This woman had barely survived 3 days ago, yet she sat across from him with steady eyes and a steady voice. "You don't owe me nothing," he said. "I'm not a debt," she replied softly. "I'm a nurse. Helping is what I do." Clay didn't answer, but something in him eased for the first time in years. That afternoon, Martha Doyle arrived. She always showed up without warning, a strong woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She stepped into the cabin, stomped snow off her boots, and stared at Norah like she was inspecting livestock. "So this is the frozen nurse," Martha said. Norah straightened. "If Clay will have me, I'm staying through winter. I can work. I won't be trouble." Martha looked between them. "Town will talk, Warren Kent especially. He's been looking for a reason to take this land." "I know," Clay said. Martha set a basket of preserves on the table. "Girl's got purpose in her eyes," she said. "That's more than most people got." After Martha left, Norah found Sarah's sewing kit at the back of a drawer. She didn't ask. She simply sat down and began repairing Clay's torn shirt with careful stitches. Clay watched from the doorway. Something in his chest, something frozen solid for years, cracked open a little. "Thank you," he whispered. "Just earning my keep," she replied, but they both knew it was more than that. January brought routine. Each morning, Norah worked on Clay's shoulder. She pressed and shifted the bone gently, guiding it toward proper healing. Clay gritted his teeth through the pain, but soon his range of motion improved. Word spread quietly. A desperate mother came at dawn, carrying a gasping child. Norah worked fast, using steam and herbs, holding the boy upright for hours until his breathing eased. By morning, he was stable. Payment came in eggs. Then others came. A rancher with a deep wound. A pregnant woman fearful of losing her baby. An old man with infection in his leg. Norah treated them all. She accepted whatever they could offer. Flour, milk, preserves. Clay built her a small space in the cabin, an examination corner neat and clean. In return, she cooked meals, mended clothes, swept the floor, and kept Clay's spirits steady. They argued playfully. They laughed sometimes. They worked together on the leaking roof. "We each got our talents," Norah teased once. "Ain't much talent in hammering crooked nails," Clay grumbled. She smiled. "Well, lucky for you, I can fix bones." He shook his head, but he smiled too. Christmas Eve was quiet. Snow fell outside. The fire burned warm. Clay disappeared into the barn and returned with a small wrapped bundle. "These were Sarah's," he said gently, handing her fine leather gloves. "She'd want them used, not locked away." Norah's breath caught. "Clay, I can't accept these." "You can," he said softly, "and you should." She tried them on. Perfect fit. "You've done more good in 2 months than I've done in 2 years, Clay said quietly. "You saved me," she whispered. "I'm just returning the favor." Clay hesitated. "Feels like more than that." She looked at him through the glow of the fire. "Clay!" He didn't dare move closer, not yet. But something warm and dangerous stirred between them. Gentle and slow, like the first flame in a cold fireplace. That night, he slept in the barn. She stood by the window, one hand on the glass, looking out at the faint lamplight. Both felt the same ache. Both tried to ignore it. Then the blizzard hit. Wind screamed for 4 straight days. Snow piled waist high. They were trapped inside. Only them. Only silence. Only shared space. Day 1 was work. Day 2 was conversation. Day 3 was truth. Norah stared at the fire, voice trembling. "Mr. Harrison, the man they said I murdered, he was dying. Painfully. Weeks at most. He knew it. Told me himself he didn't want to suffer." Clay listened. "The little boy had pneumonia," Norah whispered. "He was 7. He had his whole life ahead." She looked at Clay. "I chose the boy." Clay set down his whittling. "You chose right." "They said I didn't," she whispered. Clay moved to sit beside her. "And I chose wrong," he said softly. "I left my wife to buy horses. She died while I was gone. I wasn't there." Norah turned sharply. "Clay, you couldn't have known." "And you?" he asked quietly. "You knew what was right. Don't let their anger rewrite that." They looked at each other in the firelight, their pain different but strangely the same. On the 4th day, the storm eased. Clay taught her to dance. No music, just humming. They moved in a slow circle, her hand on his shoulder, his hand at her waist. They bumped into a chair and laughed. The laughter faded. Their faces were close. Too close. Clay leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. The kiss was soft, warm, fragile, full of answers neither had spoken yet. When she pulled away, breath trembling, she whispered, "Clay, I can't. What if this ruins you?" "You ain't ruining nothing," he said quietly. "You're fixing what's been broke." She kissed him again. Outside, the storm passed. Inside, something new began. The next morning, 3 families arrived seeking help. They brought smoked meat, eggs, seed, and gratitude. Norah treated a feverish child while Clay stood on the porch, watching life return to their land. But beyond the trees, a man on horseback watched them silently. Warren Kent. Clay's stomach knotted. The winter storm had ended. But another storm was coming. The next Sunday morning dawned cold and bright, but Clay and Norah stayed home from church. They knew the gossip would be loud. They knew Warren Kent's eyes would be sharper than ever. Better to avoid trouble. For now. But trouble came to them anyway. Martha Doyle rode up at noon, her face tight with worry. She didn't step off her horse before she spoke. "It's started," she said. Kent made his move. Clay stiffened. Norah froze. Inside the cabin, Martha explained everything. At church, Warren Kent had stood up in front of the congregation and declared Clay's home improper. He called Norah a danger to the town's moral values and demanded she be sent away within 7 days. If Clay refused, Kent threatened to block his credit, stop him from buying seed, and push legal charges for harboring an unmarried woman. Several families, scared of Kent's power, supported him publicly. Only the poorest ranchers and the Doyles stood up for Clay and Norah. "I'm sorry," Martha said softly. Some folks got more fear than sense. They didn't even have time to process her words before another sound reached the cabin. Hoofbeats. Kent himself. Clay stepped outside and shut the door behind him. The banker sat tall on his fine horse, dressed warm in clothes no rancher could afford. "Send her away, Bennett," Kent said calmly. "1 week. After that, I foreclose." Clay's jaw tightened. "I don't owe you enough to foreclose." "You will," Kent replied with a smug smile. "I own your credit. You won't buy a nail without my say-so. I'll bury you." "Why?" Clay asked. "Why do you want this land so bad?" Quote. Kent leaned forward in the saddle. "Railroad's coming through. Your land sits on the best route. I'd rather buy it cheap. Or take it." Clay stared at him. "A man who won't stand for something will fall for anything." Kent's smile vanished. 1 week, he repeated before turning his horse and riding away. Inside the cabin, Norah had heard everything. That night, while Clay slept exhausted in the barn, she wrote a letter. Her handwriting shook. "You gave me back my life." "I won't take yours. Thank you for everything. You are the best man I've ever known." At dawn, she slipped out with her medical bag and started walking toward town. She didn't get far. Clay rode up behind her, breathless and wild-eyed. He dismounted so fast he almost fell. "Norah, stop!" She froze, tears streaking her cold cheeks. "Clay," she whispered, "I can't stay. I won't let you lose everything." He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "I lost my wife because I wasn't there," he said, voice breaking. "I'm not losing you by letting you walk away." "But—" "No," Clay shook his head. "Land can be bought again. You can't." The wind blew around them as they stood in the road, snow crunching beneath their feet. "Whatever happens," Clay said, voice steady now, "we face it together." Norah's voice shook. "That's what people do when they—" She couldn't finish. Clay did. "When they love each other." Norah covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes shone with tears. Clay's did too. They sat in the snow, exhausted and hurting, but finally honest. "You choose me," she whispered. "Every time," Clay said. They walked back to the cabin hand in hand. 7 days until Kent's deadline. 7 days to find a miracle. The days passed in fear and hope. On the 7th morning, Clay rode into Redemption Bluff alone. Norah wanted to come. He refused. "I won't have them shame you." But she followed anyway, staying at the edge of the crowd gathering outside the bank. Inside, Kent had the foreclosure papers ready. Before Clay could enter, Martha Doyle stepped forward. "We got a counteroffer," she announced. "Enough money to clear Clay's debt 3 times over." Kent turned red. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns all of us," Martha snapped. "She saved my nephew's life. She saved half this valley." Dr. Hayes stepped forward next. The Old Town doctor rarely spoke in public, but when he did, people listened. "That nurse has done more good in 3 months than I have in 3 years," he said. "If you call her immoral, then I am too." The crowd murmured, some nervous, some angry, some ashamed. Kent tried to push back. "Are we going to let these 2 live in sin and call it charity?" Then Tommy, the orphan boy Norah had treated, limped forward. "She saved my leg," he said. "If she's bad, then I guess I should be dead." Silence hit the square. Then a mother stepped forward. "She saved my baby." A rancher. "She treated my wife when we had nothing." A widow. "She held my husband's hand so he didn't die alone." One voice after another. Dozens of them. Then Henry Doyle, Martha's husband, stepped to Clay's side. "My accounts are leaving your bank today, Kent, all of them." More families followed, more voices, more people pulling their money. Kent stood alone, red-faced and shaking. "You're all fools," he spat. Henry stepped closer. "No, we're people, and people stand with those who stand with them." Kent backed away, defeated. He mounted his horse and left the square. Clay stood frozen, hardly believing it. Then Norah rushed forward and took his hand. The crowd cheered. They walked home together through melting snow. Spring was coming, and something beautiful was growing with it. By March, Henry Doyle returned with lumber and a plan. "If you get married and build a real clinic," he said, "I'll donate materials. 20 families will help build it." Clay looked at Norah. She looked back with hope in her eyes. That evening, Clay spoke softly. "I ain't got much, but what I got, I'd share with you every day." Norah smiled through tears. "Yes, but only if we build a clinic so no one loses someone they love because they can't afford help." They married 3 days later. Simple vows. Dr. Hayes officiating. The whole community present. Even children ran between legs, laughing. Tommy stood beside Clay as his best man. After the vows, Clay and Norah planted an apple tree together, a symbol of what they were building. Construction on the clinic began immediately. By sunset, the frame stood tall. The cabin grew. The family grew. 2 more orphans came to live with them. Norah welcomed them with open arms. A year later, a journalist visited and wrote their story. She called it, "The Nurse of Redemption Bluff, How One Woman and a Poor Rancher Changed the Frontier." Norah cried when she read it. Clay put an arm around her shoulders. "We didn't set out to make history," he said. "We just tried to help people." Norah smiled softly. "Sometimes that's how history's made." They built a life, they built a family, they built hope. And long after they were gone, the Bennett Clinic still stood, proof that love and kindness can change a whole town, and sometimes even history.